Hello, and welcome to another episode of Navigating Cancer Together. I am your host, Talaya Dendy. Navigating Cancer Together has something for everyone facing cancer. Why? Because everyone is different with different needs, beliefs, and perspectives. Thank you for joining us for this episode. I encourage you to open your minds and your hearts. Navigating Cancer Together is everywhere. Make sure to subscribe and follow the show to stay updated on our latest episodes. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your preferred podcast app or platform. Today, I'm reaching back into the Navigating Cancer Together archives to bring you a specially remastered episode, one that holds a significant place in the history of this podcast. For those of you who don't know, Navigating Cancer Together was first launched on August 3rd, 2021. This particular episode, The Birth of a Wig Resource for Women of Color, was recorded just a few weeks later on August 27th, 2021, and it first aired on December 1st, 2021. That means this conversation happened relatively early in my podcast journey. However, its impact has resonated throughout the years. This episode features an inspiring conversation with Dianne Austin about her inspiring journey to create a vital resource for women facing hair loss due to cancer and other medical conditions, particularly women of color. It's a testament to the fact that while time moves forward, the need for these conversations and resources are as critical as ever. When I first spoke with Dianne back in 2021, Coils to Locs was in its infancy phase. I was so moved by Dianne's dedication and the powerful impact of her work. Since our initial conversation, so much has changed. Yet Dianne and her sister Pamela have continued to make huge strides, and their work has expanded its reach to cancer center hospitals and medical hair loss salons across the country, helping to provide wig inclusivity at a time when it matters the most. For those of you who might be new to the show, or even for our longtime valued listeners who want to hear the latest from Dianne Austin, here's an update on her incredible journey and accomplishments since we first aired this episode. Dianne Austin, a breast cancer survivor, is the co-founder of Coils to Locs, a distributor of premium fiber wigs for Black women or any woman with highly textured hair experiencing medical or non-medical hair loss. Coils to Locs has been featured on The Jennifer Hudson Show, The Today Show, Forbes, Elle, CBS News, and People, among other media outlets. Coils to Locs is at the forefront of disrupting an unrecognized disparity in clinical spaces that provide wigs or the absence of highly textured wig options that can be purchased with health insurance reimbursement if applicable. Dianne and her team are in the process of raising money via a crowdfunding campaign. This is an opportunity for individuals to support a business that is poised to make waves in a multi-billion-dollar industry by investing as little as $100. The funding will be used to expand their hospital and medical hair loss salon outreach and expand their wig line, including adding lace top styles, which will allow them to meet the interests of their customers. Visit coilstolocsstore.com and click on the Invest in Coils to Locs box at the bottom left-hand side of the page to be notified when they launch their second crowdfunding campaign. In addition to that great news, Coils to Locs recently began a partnership with Ascension St. Vincent Carmel Hospital in Indiana. They are in conversation with a large Boston area hospital interested in building a strong community-based partnership. That is wonderful news. If you would like a curly, coily, or braided wig, be sure to check out what Coils to Locs has to offer. I am honored to share this episode with you. Re-releasing this episode is a way to honor the longevity of this show, my commitment to bringing you crucial discussions, and the enduring importance of the resources, stories, and lived experiences I highlight on the show. So without further ado, let's dive back into this impactful conversation. Please enjoy this episode, The Birth of a Wig Resource for Women of Color, with the wonderful Dianne Austin. Hello, and welcome to Navigating Cancer Together. My name is Talaya Dendy, and today our very special guest is Dianne Austin. Dianne is the co-founder and CEO of the startup Coils to Locs, a direct-to-hospital distributor of high-quality coily, curly medical wigs for Black women or any woman with highly textured hair. Coils to Locs is at the forefront of addressing an unrecognized healthcare disparity, which impacts Black women or any women with highly textured hair experiencing chemotherapy-related hair loss. There is a lack of coily, curly wigs that are available at cancer centers in the U.S. that can be purchased with health insurance reimbursement. Dianne is a breast cancer survivor and diversity and inclusion expert turned community activist and entrepreneur. Dianne, welcome to the show and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Talaya. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Why don't we just jump right in, Dianne? As I mentioned, you are a cancer survivor yourself. Please tell us about your cancer journey and what was unique about it.
I am a cancer survivor. I'm at the 5-year mark, so that's very exciting because, as you know, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners know, this journey can be very scary. And, for me, I got my diagnosis in 2015. It was a surprise. Of course, it's nothing that you ever expect. And even when I got that notification, the nurse practitioner who called me and had done a follow-up biopsy had indicated that, it's probably going to be nothing because, on this mammogram journey that, I had taken a few years before, each year, everything looked fine every year. So this was out of the blue. And so it was caught early, thank goodness, because it was the year 2015 was the year when there was a lot of discussion about skipping a year. And I remember thinking, no, I'm not going to skip a year. I'm someone who I always go to the dentist. I always get my eyes checked. I do all of that every year. Yeah, I'm not going to skip a year. And thank goodness I didn't, because this was an aggressive form of cancer, but they caught it really early. And so I did go through surgery. I'm blessed that it was a lumpectomy and not a mastectomy because they did catch it early. But because of the type of cancer that it was, they wanted to do some rounds of chemotherapy and radiation after my surgery. And it was through that journey when I was meeting, with my oncologist that I learned all of the scary aspects of what will happen during this journey, which was the weakness, just that lack of energy, the hair loss, hair on my head and my lashes and my eyebrows, the physical changes, in addition to the weakness, which was my skin turned gray and just darkened and my nails blackened and some of them fell off. And it was just like so many physical changes. I got the diagnosis at a time that I just remember thinking, wow, this is like any diagnosis like this is the worst time. But my daughter, my only child, was graduating from high school 2 weeks before the diagnosis. And we were planning this huge party for her and my nephew, who was also graduating from high school. And so I decided that I wouldn't share this diagnosis with anyone else other than my partner, because I did not want to put a spoiler on this, huge celebration. And so that complicated things as well. So it was just really a difficult time. She was leaving for college, that year, and I wanted her to focus on her studies and not worry about me, but it was tough. But I feel blessed that I came out on the other side, but it was a journey that I just wasn't expecting. And I learned a lot about myself through that process, that it went a lot stronger, even though I always felt that I was, that strong person. I'm sort of doing that air quote thing, but it was a lot stronger than I even thought I was during this journey.
That's so true, Dianne. You learn so much about yourself and you just see how strong you really are. So before we move any further, I want to congratulate you on reaching the 5-year mark. That is a very important milestone in one's cancer journey. So congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that.
Thank
Yes,
you.
and so blessed that you're doing fine today and you're doing such amazing work to help others.
Thank you so
So
much.
you're welcome. How did your cancer journey impact your life?
It really, in actually a number of ways. I think one of the most obvious ways is that you recognize what is really important and those things that, used to irritate me, for example, you realize, yeah, it's not a big deal in the scheme of things. I think that I always valued my friendships and my family, but you see those things through a different lens, and you want to make sure that you are devoting, in my case, I wanted to make sure that I was devoting the time and attention and energy to my family and friends, and recognizing that tomorrow is not promised. So not putting off those things that are really important. And that's also true in terms of my self-care. Especially early on in that journey, I realized that I needed to slow down. Like, I was forced to slow down, of course, but as I began to come through that long journey of treatment, the chemotherapy and the radiation, also recognizing that self-care was important. So while I was in the middle of that journey, I started the process of engaging in integrative therapies that was being offered by my hospital, which included for me acupuncture. So I was able to get acupuncture while I was being treated for chemotherapy, literally during the treatment. Massage was an option for me while I was being infused. They had things like art therapy and other therapies. I was very attracted to acupuncture, and it was something that I carried with me after treatment. I began to recognize how important self-care was and the different forms of self-care. And for me, acupuncture really helped me get through a really difficult time physically. So it's not like it eliminated the tiredness or, prevented my hair from falling out, but it did help me be more at peace. And I think it did help with some of the physical symptoms. So, for example, you lose your appetite. I know I did, but the nausea wasn't there for me because, they would treat me as it relates to acupuncture for nausea. And so it seemed to help with that for me. It helped me to feel better. I got into yoga and started really trying, as difficult as it was, because I was so exhausted, to do Kundalini yoga. And I found that was very helpful for me. So I learned a lot about myself during this as well.
That's great. Getting those integrative care therapies is so important because, like you, I suffered from very bad fatigue, and having massage and things like that to just kind of help work through that and figuring out ways to keep moving, even though, I was very fatigued. It's like an oxymoron because you're very tired, but actually physical activity helps combat the fatigue.
Absolutely.
And so having those integrative therapies is amazing and so important in one's care. You also touched on recognizing what is important. I can relate to that so much because we go throughout life and unknowingly sometimes we let all these little things irritate us. But when you have something like cancer staring you in the face, you realize the things I used to get mad about, that's nothing.
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing your experience with those integrative therapies, because that is really important for the listeners to know how those things helped you. And if they have them available to them, they can look into getting that kind of support as well.
Absolutely. I found it so beneficial, even, through the tiredness and some of the other issues, to have those things to look forward to, which really helps me both physically and mentally. It's important.
Absolutely. Dianne, you started Coils to Locs, a business that was conceived because of your cancer diagnosis. Please tell us more about why you launched that business.
It was a business, Coils to Locs, that was conceived during my diagnosis. We're addressing what we found to be a little known healthcare disparity, which is the lack of alternative wig styles other than straight-haired wigs that can be found at cancer center boutiques across this country. So when I learned from my oncologist that I would be losing all of my natural hair to chemotherapy, he asked me if I wanted a wig. I said, absolutely. And so he gave me a wig prescription called a cranial prosthesis, which many may be familiar with. And he said, I can take this wig prescription to any cancer center boutique in the country, actually, that has these cancer center retail stores and has these wigs. And if I have health insurance that covers the cost of wigs for medical hair loss, I could use that prescription to support my ability to get reimbursed for these wigs. And I checked with my health insurance provider and they covered the cost of a cranial prosthesis or hair prosthesis for up to $350. So I went to the cancer center retail store at the hospital where I was treated. I knew that they sold wigs there. When I walked in, they only had straight-haired wigs, and it had been 4 or 5 years since I relaxed or straightened my hair. I knew I did not want a straight-haired wig. I had thought at the time that I would be working, which turns out it wasn't, but you want to keep some sense of normalcy. So I knew I didn't want to walk in with coily, kinky hair one day and then straight hair the next day. I just didn't want to draw that attention to myself. And so when I saw that the hospital where I was being treated did not have these wigs that were like my hair, I went to several hospitals in the Boston area where I reside, and I found they only had straight-haired wigs. And I remember thinking, oh, it's probably just because this is Boston. I was born and raised in Boston, so I can say that. And I feel comfortable saying that. I was like, well, I'm going to look outside of Boston. I was curious. I knew I wasn't going to travel anywhere, but the curiosity got the best of me. And one of my sisters, Pamela, and I enlisted her help, and we started calling around the country. We went to U.S. News and World Report, looked up where the top cancer center hospitals were across the country, dug deeper to see which of those hospitals had these retail stores, because they exist all over the country. And then we called those cancer center boutiques. And each time we were told, no, we don't sell those types of wigs. We don't sell them. So oftentimes they would refer us to their partners in the medical hair loss space that sold wigs outside of the hospital that they referred patients to, and none of those places had these wigs. And for me, that was very frustrating. I just couldn't believe that in 2015 that nobody sold these wigs. It just didn't make sense to me. I was so frustrated. And then one day I said to myself, well, instead of being frustrated, do something about it. And that's when, I decided to start a business. It was literally when I decided that I wanted to start a business to address this disparity. And that's how Coils to Locs was born. I was in the middle of chemo treatments when I decided to start this business. And we took the first few years to do some research in the space in terms of wig procurement and also just how to start a solid business. And then we launched in 2019, late 2019, not the best time to launch because a few months later there was a pandemic and all of the hospitals shut down. So we couldn't even try to get our wigs in hospitals. But as of today's date, we're in 10 hospitals and one medical salon, and we're in conversation with several hospitals. And our plan is to expand the business to make sure that our wigs get in every hospital in every part of this country, and ultimately go globally for any woman who is experiencing chemotherapy hair loss and other types of medical hair loss, so that they have some alternatives to straight-haired wigs.
That is wonderful. And I just want to thank you so much for creating this business, for filling this very huge need. Thankfully, I didn't have to shave my hair and I didn't have to wear a wig or choose to wear a wig, but I had looked at them just in case. In 2011, they definitely didn't have any curly or coily wigs, Dianne. So if I would have had to wear one, I probably would have chosen not to, because like you said, there was nothing that
Mhm.
represented me and what my hair really looked like. And that's so important, as you said, to be able to keep some form of normalcy, especially if you have to go into the workplace while you're receiving treatment. So this is huge, Dianne, very huge. Thank you.
Thank you.
What surprised you, or what aha moments did you encounter as a cancer patient?
A few, we already talked about the wig piece because that was
Mhm.
like a huge moment, aha moment. And even that I couldn't find it. And even the fact that you could get a prescription for a wig, that was just like, wow, what? It was it's a new space for me. But just the physical changes and issues that I went through, like I knew that chemotherapy would, be killing the good cells as well as the cancer cells. And the aha moment for me was that chemotherapy is such a barbaric form of treatment. Like it just really opened my eyes to that. I always equate it to like bloodletting that was done in, I don't know what century, maybe it's the 17th century, whenever it was done as a way to cure people from illness. Like, they were like doing bloodletting and putting leeches on people and things like that, to have a drug that, like the only way to potentially save someone's life from cancer treatments is to put this chemical in someone's body that kills all of your cells, like attacks both the good and the bad. And then the physical ramifications of that was like this aha moment for me. And I often like say to people, I'm hoping maybe it's 20 years from now, but years from now, people are going to look back. That I pray that there will be like improved treatments that don't cause such physical harm to the body as a way to treat cancer. And the people are going to look back and say, how barbaric was that they used to do that? You mean like pump these chemicals in? So that was a huge aha moment for me. And the other was just that, and I talked about this earlier, that I was a lot stronger than I realized I could ever be. And I always thought of myself as a strong woman and I could, tackle anything. But when you're faced with such a life-saving and changing illness, the fact that I was able to keep myself together and, I was surprised by that because I don't blame anyone for falling apart. I had my moments. I don't want to say that I'm superwoman because I'm not. I remember it upon reflection that I tried to be very much a realist through the process. Okay, I have this diagnosis. The only thing I can do is just keep moving forward. And it's just a mindset that I didn't realize would come out during this process. And I think a big part of it was, my daughter and not wanting to scare her and wanting her to focus on her education and needing to present in a certain way to make sure that she was going to be okay. So those were like some aha moments for me. A lot more, but then we'd be here for another hour.
Yes. And you do learn so much on one's cancer journey. You learn so much. You talked about the realization of how barbaric chemotherapy is. And I thought the same thing because it was so interesting. In my first chemotherapy or infusion session, I should say, it hit me at that moment, right before it was going to start. I said, I'm going to be killing myself to live. And that's kind of what hit me. And for a moment, it was like I shed a tear because I knew that I was going to be different physically. You don't become cancer or anything like that, but it does change you in some ways. So I really can relate about what you said about the treatment itself. And I had that same realization that, wow, this is something that could potentially take my life while trying to save it.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right because you're so vulnerable. It kills all of the white blood cells that fight off infection. As an example, you hit the nail on the head. You're taking something to save your life that could harm you, could kill you because it could expose you to a cold could kill you if you were exposed to a cold and, your antibodies weren't where they needed to be to protect you. So from something that we took for granted before catching a cold, you don't think about it. But I remember my oncologist saying how important it is not to be around people who are sick. They recommended not to eat at hot and cold buffets where you're like touching germy things and stuff like that. Just things that I took for granted that I had to really be aware of. And thank God I wasn't going through this during COVID. I mean,
Yes.
it's like a scary thought. But yeah, it's a drug that can potentially kill you if you're exposed to the wrong environment.
Absolutely. It's a huge risk, but it's a choice too. And that's one thing that I like people to know is you have the choice.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to make that choice with whatever you do.
Mm-hmm. And for me, it was worth the risk. It definitely was.
Yes, I agree. What advice would you give other women experiencing cancer, Dianne?
I would say, as cliche as it sounds, it would be to really just take care of yourself, like put yourself first, and also accept help from other people, because I think oftentimes as women, we're nurturers, we're caregivers, we don't accept help. But people want to help you, especially those who are closest to you, your family and friends, and even, acquaintances. They want to do something to support you, and let them do that. Don't say, oh no, I don't need help, or I'm okay. The way that I was able to do that, for example, it's like people, they just wanted to do something for me. So I would schedule people to sit with me during chemotherapy. So I had this schedule of like family and friends, and there was more people who wanted to sit with me than my treatments that were available, thank God.
Yeah.
But, I was trying to think, I just remember thinking like people, I have to not, and someone gave me that advice. So that's advice that I'm sharing, because at first I was like, no, there's nothing you can do. But I would just swallow my pride or whatever it was that would make me say, oh, I'm fine. No, let people help you. If they want to bring you a meal, let them do that. If they want to go with you to treatments or just give you a ride, let them do that. I think that's really important. You're helping yourself and them.
I agree. And you're right. So many women and even men struggle with asking for help. And I think in the minds of a lot of people, it's like they don't want to be a burden on anyone.
Yes.
But yes. And it's like your friends and your loved ones, they want to show up for you. They just don't know how a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm. And just, let them, open yourself up to letting them do that. It'll make them feel so much better. And they are supporting you, and they're helping to make your life easier so you can focus on getting well.
Absolutely. So true. So, Dianne, what I like to do before I end each podcast is ask every guest 2 questions. The first question is, what is something that you've learned in life that you would like to share with the listeners?
That's a great question. And I would say that I learned that it's okay to be vulnerable. And this connects to what we were just talking about, because if you accept that, and I'll speak for myself, that I'm not superwoman, I can't do everything myself. It's okay to be vulnerable. Then you open yourself up for help, whether it's either self-help or other people's help and support who care for you and want to support you through a difficult time.
That's great advice. Dianne, what's next for you and Coils to Locs?
Well, we're on this trajectory, which has been really exciting. We have, up to this point, Coils to Locs has been a direct to hospital distributor, but based on the many, many emails that we get from women who have lost their hair due to chemotherapy, and quite frankly, for other medical related reasons that have nothing to do with cancer, we are launching an online store where we can sell wigs that are different from the styles that we sell to the hospitals directly to consumers. So that website will be launched, we hope, by late October. We're in the process of working on that now. So that's huge for us. And then in relation to that, one of the things that we hope to add within the next year to that newly launched online store is an augmented reality component so that women can try on our wigs virtually and be able to, if you can't get to a hospital or you just want to get a sense of what these wigs look like, whether you're a patient or anyone who's just interested in the wigs, they'll be able to do that virtually. So we're working on those things. And of course, expanding.
That is very exciting and very much needed, especially the online, giving people that option to just go online, try on a wig virtually, say, hey, I like this one, and then know that their wig is coming to them in the mail or however you guys handle that. So that's very exciting.
Thank you. Yes, we're really excited about that. So that'll be hopefully by late October. It will definitely be this year, though, as long as there's no kinks in the process.
Great. It has been such an honor to watch Coils to Locs grow in the fashion that it has. It is filling a huge need. And I'm just so happy that you've been able to come on and share all of your wonderful information and reach more people. It's something that people need to know about. And thank you for taking a tough time in your life and filling this need for yourself and so many other women.
Thank you so much for your kind words and for just giving me an opportunity to share my story. And one last thing I would like to say is whether you're a man, woman, it doesn't matter. Keep your medical appointments and your screenings. It's so critical because you want to be able to stay ahead of any issues or problems. In my case, if I had skipped a year in terms of a mammogram, my story would be different. And I may not even be on this show talking to you because of the type of cancer that I had. But because I stayed on top of those appointments, I was able to, I strongly feel like I'm able to be here with you today. So I just want to share that thought with people.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad too that you kept your appointments and went to your screenings because it is a blessing to have you here with us today and all of the great work that you're doing for others that are going through a tough time. Before we end today, Dianne, if people want to learn more about you or if they have questions about Coils to Locs or the wigs, where can they find you?
Definitely, first of all, through a social media. We are on Instagram and Facebook and as well as LinkedIn. You can just type in Coils to Locs or Coils to Locs wigs and we'll come up. Or through our website, our email address is info@coilstolocs.com.
Wonderful. I will include all of that information in the listen notes so that the audience can go directly to your social media and to your website. Again, Dianne, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your story and your wisdom. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your support and thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Before we end today, I'd like to give a shout out to the listeners. Thank you for joining us. That's it for this Wednesday. And until next time, let's keep navigating cancer together. Take care.